love tacos,
Who doesn't like a taco?
right? Yeah, and I mean, I like to take selfies with my food too. You know? I love that. And when a taco is really beautiful, I like to take a picture of it, right? So what I've just explained to everyone in the room is here's the experience I want to create and here's the story. And I've made it personal, right? Like I love tacos. You love tacos. Wouldn't it be nice if we could provide an easy button and a free taco to our customers, right? And then I say, okay, now let me tell you how we light up that experience.
Frankly, I can't remember how the chain happened here, but I saw something somewhere about the term experience architecture,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a new one to me a couple months ago. But it encapsulates the thing that I've been wrestling with, and we as the customer have been wrestling with for 3-4 years now, which is how do you say this? How do you bring all these disciplines together so they make sense holistically, so that you're addressing all of the needs, wants, and concerns of all the stakeholders? And I think experience architecture kind of does that.
I agree with you.
And if that's the case, I guess my work here is done, you know? Nothing else to say.
Maybe not, because I think there's lots of different flavors of experience architecture, right? Um, I've debated that just with some of my colleagues about, why am I so focused on the marketing technology side of it? And my argument to that is, well, marketing technology is what creates that experience for your customers, right? But in order to get to that, you have to understand the people that are trying to provide that experience as well as your customers, right? And I think that's where the nuance is for me is it's not just about, I mean, at the end of the day, what I do is I help marketers, sell a product or service and we want to have someone hand over their credit card to pay for that product or service. At the end of the day, that's all that marketing technology is really doing is providing that experience so that you can sell that experience, right? But when you think about all of the things that have to work within an organization to be able to create that great experience, there's so many different ways you could go.
Completely.
So yeah, yeah. So I don't think your job here is done, Mike, by
Okay.
far. I
I
think
was looking for an early retirement out here, but it's not going
well,
to happen.
well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was listening to one of your other podcasts, and one of the things that struck me was that I'm starting to hear the same story that I tell about why I do the things that I do. I think one of your guests said that he was, at the end of the day, he was a frustrated marketer. And yes, yeah. So I am also a frustrated marketer. And the reason why I do what I do is because I want to take away that frustration for other marketers like me. I want the technology to work. And like you, Mike, when I was struggling for a long time to figure out how to articulate that to a non-technical audience. And when I found the term experience architecture, it just nailed it for me.
Yeah.
Because what it is, it's a combination of the experience that you want to create for your customer, or in some cases, the customers know they want to create an experience, but they don't know how to get there, right? And then you have to have all of this beautiful technology to light it up, right? And in order to do that, you really have to understand the internal workings of an organization, right?
And the components, not
And the
the people, the
components.
culture,
Yeah.
the components, the tech stacks, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Exactly.
I know I said culture before, but I feel like the more I have these conversations, the more it ends up being a cultural thing. Like all these things have
100%.
to be speaking the same language, rowing the same direction, whatever your
Yep.
analogy is, and that's
Agreed.
difficult.
It's hard. It's like herding cats sometimes. You
Yeah.
know, it really is. I think, I've had a lot of amazing clients that I've kind of helped through this experience. And what I like to do, I've been calling it marketing technology strategy, But really, I'm thinking about changing my tune a little bit and going more into the experience architecture piece, because I think it really explains what needs to happen. But for me, I've found the most value that I've been able to provide to customers as what I call as being a marketing technologist, is the ability to really put myself into the shoes of the customer and the person that has to create that experience. And uh, it's been an interesting journey, because every organization I've walked into has had most of the same issues, but there's always been a different way to solve it, right?
Interesting. I'm
So,
dying to hear what those commonalities are.
well, well, let's talk about personalization. Personalization is a big term, right? And there's, the customer wants to be able to correct, the organization wants to provide a personalized experience for their customer. But that experience is going to be different everywhere across the board. It could mean, with client service or the help desk. It could mean, the ability of someone at a point of sale system to help serve up the right experience for a loyalty program, right? I mean, there's just so many different flavors of it, right? But at the end of the day, it's about, internally within the organization, understanding who is in charge of each of those pieces of the experience, and then making them champions of the holistic view of it.
I
You
love that
know,
approach.
yeah, it's worked really well for me. I've worked in a lot of industries, and across the board. And for some reason, the franchise industry keeps coming up into my ecosystem. And the franchise industry is very interesting to me anyway, right? The inner workings of a franchise industry. I think my first customer was a smaller taco franchise that is, really a regional taco company in Southern California, which is a classic place to get a good taco,
Sure.
right? And they were smaller. They'd just been purchased by a family investment company, and they really needed to understand. Well, gosh, I have to have a website for my brand, but then I also have to have a portal for my franchisees, right? And that's two different types of technologies that you have to figure out how to bring in, right? And then the franchisees were all, it was a fun brand and really big on social media from the original store. But then how do you manage that social media presence across the board, right? So
And
what's been,
I don't know when that was, but
uh-huh.
managing a social media was interesting at first, then became hugely complex, and now it's a massive undertaking. Like you
It
really have
totally
to
is.
understand that ecosystem to play
It,
effectively there.
yeah, absolutely. And you're going to have specialists in those different areas too, which, I'm glad you brought that up, because for me, and I lead really large teams now, and I have to have those experts on my team to be able to handle each of those work streams, right? And that's, again, it all ties into that experience architecture that we're trying to create, right? So it's an interesting thing, because, and going back to your question about what are some of the similarities, well, I now have a very large franchise client that I'm working with that has a global presence. It's not just, located in Southern California. And many of the challenges that I looked at or had to help solve for with my little small taco client, same exact thing I'm
Is that
doing now.
right?
It's just on a bigger scale,
Yeah.
right? And I've learned a lot in between.
Well, are you able to elaborate on what those scaled differences, those scaled similarities were? I mean, without giving away anything you shouldn't give away,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
of course.
listeners would love to hear like, oh, that's the same thing I'm dealing with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could think of two different paths, and I'll give you the option to choose,
Okay.
right? I can think of the internal path, the organizational version. I have a good example there. But I can also talk about the external client experience, which I think is probably what you're going to choose. Which path?
Can I choose both? I
You can
want
choose
both.
both, sure.
Okay. All right.
Why not? Why not? Okay. So let's talk internally
Okay.
first. because that'll be a shorter story, I think. One of the things that was a challenge for that's a challenge for both customers is really understanding the team that's needed to support, this overall experience, right? And it's not just IT. A lot of times the IT department in the bigger organization, not necessarily in the smaller one, but the IT organization is tasked with figuring out, what is this marketer trying to talk to me about? What are they trying to tell me? How do I support this? Right? Um,
Can I
the
just say,
small,
like,
yeah,
when you can't see this because this is a podcast, but
yeah,
I just want to comment on how you were describing how an IT group has to try and interpret what a marketing group is saying. And
yeah.
I could see in your body language what you were reflecting anyway. I think you're reflecting is like, I don't understand what these guys are saying,
Oh,
which is the most universal truth I think you can say about that relationship.
yeah, in my case, I've really trained myself to speak IT and marketing. I learned the marketing. I was a frustrated marketer, right? But my mission has been to speak IT so that I can bring the two pieces together, right? So that is that is where the experience architecture, someone like me comes in to help bring those two worlds together. And that's really what I learned from the smaller org too, because I had to do the same thing, right? So the conversation between business and technology internally, that traditional, difference between how IT thinks and how marketing thinks, or how the loyalty business side of things think, or how depending on the organization, the marketing function just gets bigger.
Right.
But the challenge between translating what marketing and IT are there to support, that's really right there is where architecture and experience comes in, right?
So completely agree with this. I mean, I'm just
Awesome.
loving. I mean, we're singing off the same song sheet here. Um,
Awesome.
but it also requires kind of a lot of politicking, I think. And I'd love to hear your thinking and your experience on that, because there are two different cultures, there are two different languages, there are two different outputs and outcomes that they're going for,
Right.
largely. So how do you reconcile that? How do you create one conversation there?
You know, um, in smaller with smaller clients, it's easier. That's the bigger clients, it gets much more complicated. You're very That's a very astute statement. A lot of my day is spent negotiating and translating, to
I'm
be
sure.
honest.
I'm
Yes,
sure. Yeah.
yes. And not only with my own, I work for a very large IT consulting company, right? And so my target audience is usually the IT department. So I come in on the IT side, and then they say, okay, good. You can go talk to the marketing team and tell me what it is they're trying to ask me to do. Right. That's really the secret sauce. And the amount you have to do a lot of relationship building internally, right? Because again, people have set up their processes and the things that they do in a way that makes sense to them.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, that never really translates easily to how IT or how technology is going to translate that process, right? So you have to really be able to say, listen, I got it. I understand the experience you're trying to create for your customer. Totally get it. We have these beautiful customer journey. We have this experience map that we've done. In my head, I can tell you exactly which technology is going to light up each stage of that experience, but we're going to have to change the process a little bit so the technology can match what your dream is, right? And that's where the negotiation and politicking comes in.
That's probably topic for another 10
Oh, 100%.
conversations. Like, that's that we can't even go there today.
I
But I
know.
think it's really interesting because it's um, I'm going to say 95% of the folks that I interact with,
Hmm.
that's the nature of the problem. It's reconciling different KPIs for different parts of the organization with technology stacks that were built for this with some flexibility, but now we're looking over here and we've got to kind of mash these things together that
Mm.
may or may not really play well together, but we got to figure that out. And then all the stakeholders that have something to do with all that conversation. So it
Yeah,
becomes a big deal. And I know that, I mean, you sit at the, I'm going to just say the top of the heap
I
for a
do.
lot of organizations, and you have a perspective that I think would be really valuable here because um yeah, I probably speak with for the most part, I'd call them senior execs and some C-level leaders, but for the most part, they're senior executives
Hmm.
um, who are all going, okay, well, we've got this deal we have to figure out here. It's, a new customer, fill in the blank, customer engagement, customer loyalty, customer retention strategy, whatever it happens to be. And I know there's a technology component that I have to deal with, but I've got four different groups here that are all, you know, completely necessary to be involved. And yet it's maybe, well, historically difficult to get those people to speak and to hear each other. It's just
Oh,
it's a listening
100%.
thing.
Yeah. I'll confess a secret to you because we all like it when somebody confesses something. I think one of my most favorite things is to walk into a really large organization that has siloed business stakeholder groups, siloed groups, um, and discover that there's been some shadow IT that's happened,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it,
Happens a
because
lot.
e exactly, and, I think a lot of that the shadow IT comes like, marketing usually has a huge budget, well, in enterprise orgs, which I'm used to working with now, right? Marketing usually has just a vast budget. Um, if you think about the cost of just managing social media and the agencies that help with that now, right? Um, throwing $2-3 million at a marketing technology tool when you have like a $20 million budget just for social media. I mean, whatever,
Right,
right?
right.
But if you don't have the strategy behind it, then you're going to get frustrated, and the marketers aren't really tuned into all those data silos that happen, right? Oh man, I love that because I like to come in and with me, understanding what a marketing team is trying to get to, or the loyalty team, if they're separate, if they have a separate loyalty team, try understanding what it is they're trying to do, and then helping IT say, hey, if you consolidated onto this particular platform, you'd be on a platform for growth. The marketing team would be less frustrated and they wouldn't have to spend money on this, shadow IT that they have. It's like taking candy from a baby for me, because just being able to understand both sides of the fence, the experience and the architecture, it's such a powerful thing to be able to do. So I don't know. I kind of nerded out there, but
Well, I
it's secretly what I love to do is unwind that mess.
well, I think the fact that you're good at it is probably more about you than your method. I mean, you're passionate
Oh,
clearly about this,
yes.
but from my conversations, that's one of the most difficult things to do. You're unwinding a mess that nobody really wants to get into
Oh,
because
totally.
there's a very limited understanding of the whole project process and intended outcome.
Right.
So, hats off to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I want to take a quick break from the conversation to tell you a story, our story, the story of the customer. As of the air date for this podcast, the customer is officially 4 years old. And if you do the math, that puts our birth date just before the pandemic hit in full. And if you operated in this space at the time, you'll know that this business, at least in our world, came to a screeching halt. And it didn't really come back to life for another year plus. To say those were difficult months is a giant understatement. They were for a lot of businesses. But we got lucky. Right around that same time, I was introduced to a person and his company that literally transformed this operation and got us on a solid footing on a solid path. I'm happy and proud to say that the customer is now stable and strong, and a lot of that credit goes to a group called Relationshiping Consulting. Relationshiping is the brainchild of George Wiedemann, who, if you're not familiar, is the founder and CEO of one of the largest ad agency conglomerates in the world. His tenure leading the efforts at Time Inc. and Gray Direct were transformative, to say the least. And now George and his team are helping organizations across the customer engagement ecosystem to build healthier businesses and happier shareholders. I can't say enough about the effect of those efforts on the customer. Suffice to say, if your business operates in some corner of this big ecosystem, and if you're looking for a growth partner and strategist, you really should give Relationshiping a shout. Or reach out to us at the customer and we'll put you in touch. I think that's kind of what I loved about and still love about the way experience architecture is articulated, that it's a central idea with componentry that supports all of these different necessary disciplines and efforts. And I really don't think I've seen that articulated well up until now.
Oh, well, I'm glad I can help be the
Well,
one to start telling that story properly, right?
might just me because I've been living in a cave for a while, but
I don't know. You have some pretty interesting guests on your show. I really like the content you put out there.
oh, thanks. But but there is a universality to the problem, and I guess when I first saw the term experience architecture, and I'm starting to go, oh my gosh, that really says it well. That's really,
Mhm.
I wonder if you could graph this together so you produce some sort of chart with all the components and everything feeding into the right. Anyway, I nerded out. But then I
Did you
started
try
thinking,
putting something together?
no, but I did a lot of Googling on it, which
Like
isn't
I
quite
said,
the
there's
same.
lots of different flavors.
Right. But I started thinking about, not only the cultural hurdles and the technological hurdles, but I think there's also kind of a conceptual hurdle, because I think the people you speak with, their light bulbs are going to have to go off pretty quickly when you start saying things like experience architecture. They have to get it.
Yes.
And it's a term that isn't really in the lexicon for most marketers or for most IT folks. So it sort of says it intuitively, but it almost always requires some explanation when I've said it.
Yes.
So your experience, you're bringing this new idea, or maybe it's just a new phrase, a new name for something we all struggle with. I don't know. But there's a conceptual part of this that I think your light bulb has to go off
Right.
somewhere in this process if you're going to get it.
Oh, no, I totally agree. Um, and how do I do that? How do I help explain that is I think what you're trying to ask me, right?
Yes, it's a better way to phrase that than I did.
Got it. Um, well, for me, like you said, I'm very passionate. I love what I do. So I think my enthusiasm about the topic really helps out a lot, right? It's easy for me to make friends within an organization and get them excited, right? But not everybody's like me. Right? Not everybody wakes up every morning going, "Yay, I get to do marketing technology." Right? So, and not everybody wants to be my friend either. I'm not everyone's cup of tea all the time, right? So how do you get someone excited and understand the concept of experience architecture? For me, it's about telling a story. Once you know an organization and what they're all about, whether you're selling tacos or sandwiches, right? You just need to be able to tell a story. So that brings all of the people across those stakeholder groups. Here's an example. So we have some new data about our customers. We learned some new things about our customers, and we want to sell a bunch more tacos over the next couple months. And we've discovered that our crazy chorizo taco is the most loved taco. It's got a cult following on social media. So here's what we need to do. We need to be able to give our customers what they're asking for. We need an easy button for them to purchase this taco. Maybe we need to, put out a buy one, get one free offer out there, you know, just anything we can do to encourage our customers to get excited and, continue to engage with our brand with this fun taco, right? So everybody understands that. I mean, you guys like tacos, right? You eat
Sure.
tacos.
You bet.
I love tacos,
Who doesn't like a taco?
right? Yeah, and I mean, I like to take selfies with my food too, you know? I love that. And when a taco is really beautiful, I like to take a picture of it, right? So what I've just explained to everyone in the room is here's the experience I want to create and here's the story. And I've made it personal, right? Like I love tacos. You love tacos. Wouldn't it be nice if we could provide an easy button and a free taco to our customers, right? And then I say, okay, now let me tell you how we light up that experience, right? And then I explain there's several different pieces of technology that have to make that happen. And then we also have to make sure the people selling that taco know how to be excited about it and give the customer their free taco, right? So once you like I could map out that story and then I could draw. I could literally have done whiteboarding sessions with this. And I've said, okay, here's your point of sale system. Here's your people that need to be trained on this. Here's the offers technology. And here's what your marketing team needs to put together. And by the way, if this data is going to go somewhere, we need to make sure it goes into these systems so that we can send the emails and the push notifications, which, those are those fun little things you click on with your mobile phone, right? To open the app, to buy the taco and get one free, right? So that's how I do it.
And everybody nods accordingly. And next thing you know, everybody's rowing in the same direction.
Usually. No. Um,
Well, you make it
well,
sound
if I'm
intuitive and
lucky,
easy, and I'm sure it's not that, but you know,
yeah, if the technology is already implemented and it exists, then it's usually an easier story to sell to the IT people because they already know that they can do it. But if you're talking about like a personalization strategy, then it becomes more of a getting that simple little personalized email or offer out there turns into 6 months of work.
yeah, I can imagine. I can
Yeah,
imagine. I'm just curious, to jump topics just a little bit.
sure.
So when you're interacting with these organizations, and we've acknowledged that this concept of experience architecture, at least as a term, is fairly new. How do you find marketers specifically respond to the idea? Is it something that marketers uh, can easily adjust to in their thinking? Can they deal with and start thinking through holistic processes? Is that more of a I'm interested because it seems to me that most marketers I know, the practitioners, the leaders, we have our KPIs and we charge hard for them. We are going to make those numbers, by
Yes.
golly. And it ends up producing kind of a myopic, kind of narrow field of view on what you need to do to accomplish that, I think.
Yeah. You know, that's really excellent question. And I have my opinions on that, right? Um, but what I've seen out there is that there's also many different flavors of marketers, right? I'm sure you've noticed this. There's been a trend for a marketing team to have many different types of roles. So you'll have the traditional CMO. Even the CMO, I think we could call that CXO because a lot of times the CMOs are being asked to, um, be in charge of driving revenue and handle sales as well. It just depends on the type of organization, right? You have CMOs who are really all about just promoting a big brand,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of the other pieces get merged off into different areas of the marketing team or the business, right? So to make a short story longer, which is what I love to do.
Me too. This is perfect.
Yeah. Um, what I find is you have to have a different tactic depending on who you're talking to in a marketing department. And most likely, most of the time, the marketers I work with are the more technical marketers, right? The ones that are actually maybe the admins of the different tools that are used. You know, maybe the admin of the back office operations tool that runs the workflows for the agency and approvals, right? Or maybe it's the marketer that knows how to code some HTML and build, you know, content in a HTML template for email messaging, or even understands a bit of HTML to be able to, you know, post content on a website.
Right.
So I tend to find that the message resonates more with more of like the marketing director or the technical marketing director. And then they become the champion of that. And then they're able to help speak to their boss in the language that their boss understands. So that's really how I've been successful. I'm certainly happy to talk to the CMO or the CXO, but I will be very high level vision. This is, if we do this personalization strategy, I have seen X amount of lift with your campaigns, right? And
Right.
this is in general what you can expect. So,
I'm thinking about a couple of conversations I've had recently. So one of them is a good friend of mine, actually, very opinionated guy, and his view on this kind of a of an attempt is that all
mhm.
you need to do is change the incentives. If you
Oh, going
right,
down
so
that
you've met
path.
this kind of person
Oh.
already. You know how this goes. And I think there's a lot more to it. I really do. I think, yep, changing their incentives is a smart, probably core thing you want to do. But anyway, I'm going to answer the question I'd rather you answer, because I think that's one component, but maybe not
Yeah,
the whole thing.
yeah. So, um, changing the incentives, I think, works within certain organization types, right? Um, I think I feel like it's a stick when you really need to give cake, right? Um, sure, you can change the incentives, or you can cut. You know, the organization can come up with, I want you to drive $1 million in sales with this one campaign, right? And I'm going to give you this amount of money to work with it, and I need you to double that money, whatever, right? And if you don't do this, then you're not getting promoted and you're not getting your bonus, right? Well, it doesn't make sense to me if that incentive is not aligned with what can actually be accomplished,
Right.
right? So I think incentives are fine as long as it's done reality with the reality of, I mean, and the reality can be many different things. It's the digital maturity of the organization itself. How ready are they
Good point. Really good
to,
point.
you know, personalize an experience? Are they still doing manual processes just to build segments? Do they really understand the story that their data is trying to tell them? Right? So, sure, you can say, you know, I want you to do this big campaign, but is the infrastructure and the people that are actually in charge of that experience and that architecture, are they really ready to help support that? If not, then you need to focus on getting them ready to be able to get to be able to achieve that incentive.
So I'm going to introduce you to my friend so you can talk him off the cliff.
Maybe you should interview the two of us.
Right, I
We
know.
can bounce it off each other.
It'd be
That
a
might be
great
fun.
interview or a terrible one. I'm not sure which. I have to see.
I don't know.
Um,
It could be fun.
he's a really smart guy, and I'm making fun of him, and I'll pay for this later. But um, the other conversation I'm thinking of is was speaking with a group that they're basically CX consultants.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the version of CX where it's very focused on journey mapping and kind of whole enterprise CX, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to the version of CX which is more customer service oriented.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, and their view was squarely in, yeah, we are tasked with these monumental changes, organizational changes. It's There's a lot of culture that has to happen there, But if you can get the employee experience right, the EX as your starting point, then everything else is golden from there.
I
Is what
so agree with that.
do you? Because I thought
Yes.
yes, but yes with asterisks on it. Um,
No.
tell me
I
what you
mean,
think about that.
well, so, we started our conversation and you noticed that, we we are very focused on getting someone to hand over a credit card for to buy a product or service from us, right? You're creating that experience. They're making you that customer a brand champion and, that sort of thing, right? But I have had the best success when I've focused my initial work on the internal organization. And the reason for that is because if they don't understand the holistic picture of the experience they're trying to create for their customer, like for example, the help desk doesn't know that we have a big offer campaign that's gone out the door
How
and
often does that happen?
all the time,
All the time.
right? So if you focus on making sure you bring that story internal of the overall experience and really focus on the change management of it, which is why I love what you said about your CX friends. Um, if you can really focus on the change management that needs to happen across the org and make everyone really excited about it, it helps so much. Because, you call, "Hey, I just had a problem with the offer. It didn't redeem," and you're calling the help desk, and they're like,
What? Yeah.
versus, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let me pull up your profile. I'm gonna refund you right now." Right? "We're having this campaign right now. Let me offer you this other incentive." The word incentive stuck in my head. "Let me
Right.
give you this other offer to make up for it." Right? I mean, that's such a better experience, don't you think?
Completely. And I'm also thinking of all the crazy cool innovations that AI is bringing to the customer service world right now.
Yes.
And we had to talk about it. You knew it was going to come up,
I was ready. I'm
right?
ready.
I know. And having seen some of this technology in action, it's really, really cool how they can m mimic empathy and care digitally at scale. And that's just really neat stuff. But I think what you're
But
saying is if you engage your employees first, it may never get there. You may never need that. You
well,
just
how
may,
else are you gonna train the AI models too,
well, right. Yeah.
right? If you don't wanna you have to have a person that understands the experience that needs to be created so they can explain to the data scientists how to create that model,
Yep.
right? And I love all the stuff that's coming out with AI, right? I love it. There's so many different flavors.
It's
There's lots of different flavors of everything. I love that saying, but there's AI for creating content, there's AI for help desk, there's AI for, we got Chat GPT out there that everybody loves.
amazing. It's amazing.
It just seems so smart, right? It is amazing. But you know,
Oh shoot, you're breaking up on me.
oh,
You
hang
there?
on,
Can't tell if it's me or you. It might be me. No, I
back.
think.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back. Okay.
Okay. Um, So for me, I'll just go back to where I was. For me, when it comes to AI, if you don't understand the story that your data is trying to tell you and where the gaps in that story are, which chapters are missing, you're not going to be successful with AI because it's data, right? How are you going to train the AI to do what you need it to do?
Yeah.
And I think that, it doesn't matter what size organization I've worked with, it's the data is always the biggest challenge. It's also aside from the organizational silos with the different areas in the business, you've got all this technology pumping out its own type of data.
Right.
And you know, you got to figure out how to harness the power of that data before you can be successful with AI. That's where I stand right now. That's where organizations are just starting to figure out what is this AI thing. It's a new shiny object, right?
Very
And
much.
you've got yeah, absolutely. And you've got all sorts of things that you need to think about, um, governance, is it gonna take over my job? Which I'm not certain that that needs to be, a concern yet.
Yeah,
Right?
that might just be the media telling us we need to be concerned because
Absolutely. There's been a lot of Hollywood movies that, make
yeah,
people think
right.
that. But at the end of the day, it's really harnessing the power of your data and being able to automate responses and using this technology to really be able to create an experience that's faster, and more efficient so that, when you do have to get to a human to help for help, or, you have to interact with a human at a point of sale service, your point of sale system, or, whatever, you've enjoyed the experience up to that point and it's gotten you there faster, which means you hand over your credit card faster.
Right. And
Right?
everybody's happy after that. Right.
Yes, exactly.
Um, I want to keep this conversation going indefinitely because there's so much to talk about.
So
And
many things. Yes.
and it's all fascinating and it's all incredibly important right now.
Yes.
However, I'm going to do you a favor and not take up the rest of your day here. Um, but I would really, really like it if
I think we could do that very easily.
I know, and I mean, just there is so much. Um,
Yes.
but if you think that you have an appetite for continuing this conversation and we can get back on your schedule, then I absolutely want to because it's fun, it's vital, and really important to the people who listen to this podcast.
I would be happy to join
You
you
didn't have to say that,
anytime.
by the way. I know I set you up a little bit, but
No, no, I honestly, um, I would love to do that with you. I think there's a lot of really interesting things to dig into here, because the concept of XA versus, just building a technology stack and how that needs to merge together. I really feel like, um, we have in marketing land, we have a lot of acronyms that come out, and you have these terms that come out that are, things like CDP. Now, CDP isn't really CDP anymore, right? But I really feel like this term experience architecture helps bring together business and technology in a way that makes sense. And maybe we can be the harbingers or the messengers of how that story gets told and how it gets explained to the outside world.
I think that yes, yes to that. Um,
Awesome.
and I'd love to continue it. And I know of a few other people who are singing the same song, and maybe we can all get together
Wonderful.
at some point and harmonize. No, we're
I
not going
love
to sing.
that.
There's
I
no
love that.
singing on
Let's
this
let's
show. So
definitely stay in touch.